who is the CEO and founder of White Cloud Security. If you have time, please go by the event area over here to the right that says White Cloud Security for more information on this company. Mr. Shanklin is a leader in developing products for both the telecommunications and the computer security markets. He spent 6 years developing the best-in-the-class ComSec telecommunication protocols for transmitting secure data, including a multicasting protocol that he pioneered for secure wideband satellite communications. He was the director of software development for 2 network security startups that were acquired by Cisco Systems. One of them was Wheel Group Corporation and Psionic Software in '98 and 2002. Prior to starting his company, White Cloud Security, in 2013, where he invented a breakthrough app trust listing technology, he was the vice president of engineering at Core Trace Incorporated, an application whitelisting company that was acquired by Lumention Security in 2012. Out of his 36 years of experience in the computer science field, he spent a combined total of 19 years accomplishing groundbreaking work in the computer security and ComSec fields. We welcome Ziggy, who has joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me in the back? Reminds me of an old story of a preacher who was preaching, and a guy in the back row kept standing up and kept saying, "Brother, you have to speak up louder, I can't hear you." And the preacher would just drone on and kind of get real quiet. And then the guy in the back would jump up and say, "Preacher, please speak up louder, I can't hear you back here." He would drone on for a little bit, loud, and then he'd go back quiet. Finally, he jumped up, a guy in the front row jumped up and said, "Can you guys hear him back there?" And he said, "No, I can't at all." And he says, "I'm coming back to sit with you." So I hope that none of you on the front row will get up and go join the back row. So, there was some things that John Ford said about talking about the young people who are here, and Dr. Lawson talking about these young people here, both from high school and college, and entering their careers. And it made me think a lot about my start in the computer business. And when I graduated, I went to TMI for 5 years here, and then my senior year I transferred to Mac. I said, I'm never going to go into the military. And the day I graduated, that week, I went and joined the U.S. Air Force. And I ended up at computer school in Keesler Air Force Base. And that was back starting in 1974. It's been a long time. And so those of you who are starting your computer security careers today, or find interest in it, you can go to the moon. You can do whatever you want to achieve. You just have to stick to it. And putting products out can be very difficult at times. You just have to be perseverant and continue to press and be a problem solver. One person I'd like to recognize here is Steve Snap, who's my partner. He's the CTO of White Cloud Security. He's kind of a bashful guy. He's not going to jump up here and take a bunch of accolades. But he got his master's degree at UC Davis. And I had heard about him long before I had the opportunity to work with him. And I'm very privileged to have him basically working with us at White Cloud Security. So there's a couple of questions like, my talk here today is about an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of remediation. And the reason I chose this subject, there's a lot of people in the marketplace today that are starting to say, well, don't worry about preventing intrusions. Just detect and then remediate. If you can't detect something, yeah, it would be nice to be able to remediate at some point in time. I think John had pointed out that many organizations and corporations that they went to didn't even know that they'd been attacked. So how, if you don't know that you're going to, that you've been attacked, how are you going to remediate it? And the other reason I want to talk about this prevention versus remediation is, it's the old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We don't give up on prevention just because we have things change. And we'll get to that here in a second. So our experience, why does this matter? Well, Steve Snap has been stopping computer attacks since the early and mid-90s. And I was working here for Wheel Group Security. We were acquired by Cisco in 1998, and we were basically preventing networks attacks. there was a very major corporation that had tried out the wheel group technology, installed it, and a couple of weeks later, they told the salespeople, we don't really need this. It was a big credit card company. They said, we don't need this. And it took the salespeople a while to get there, but before they could get there, the company called and said, our log servers are crashing. You got to come over here and figure out what's going on. And what happened was their admin had left open their network connection wide open. And attacks were coming through, and the NetRanger product was killing these attacks and protecting them even though they didn't know what was happening. And they changed their tune about not needing that particular solution. In 2002 was the first time that Steve and I worked together, and this is kind of highlights our experience. Once companies like Wheel Group started producing intrusion detection systems, you generate a lot of alarms. How many people have worked with an intrusion detection system here? Do you get a lot of alarms? Or raise your hands if you've ever seen more false alarms than real alarms. Okay. So one of the problems we had back in the early days, in the early 2000s, was you would end up with Vignette at one of our pilot customers had 90,000 alarms in 1 month. And our product, to help automatically remediate these, would figure out which ones were real and which ones were false. And so our experience of this started 13 years ago. And so we have our own perspective on remediation. It's important, but prevention can't be thrown away. So I don't have to tell you really what the problem is today. It's a global problem. We're essentially at war. We're at war with not only foreign companies, but with criminals who are trying to destroy us. And you people in the IT business are having grenades dropped in your laps on a regular basis if you don't have the right kind of protection. And of course, the sources are coming from all over the place. My perspective on this several years ago was that essentially malware is antisocial software and hacking is antisocial behavior. And it requires more. You have to think about, we engineers have a tendency to think in technical terms and technical solutions, but you have to be able to come up with solutions. And this is where I see cyber first responders as part of one of those social solutions, of people banding together. John McClure, who is was the VP of Dell Global Security, said, all of us in the community have to lock shields and work together. And that's part of what we see as part of our solution, and the way to work forward is to make sure that we provide solutions that not only protect and prevent, but also make it a bigger opportunity for people like you to work together to be able to prevent malware from attacking and being successful. One of the things that is being pushed today is a thing called, talk about the golden hour. In fact, I just saw this on the Fortune.com site, and it's an article about why golden hour is important. The golden hour that they're referring to comes from the medical term. It's the first hour after some kind of a trauma, like a car accident or a heart attack. And in that golden hour, you have to resolve the problem, otherwise things typically get worse. You know, if I have a heart attack, I hope you guys won't wait an hour to take me to the hospital. And it's the same thing. If you knew that there was a breach, if somebody was able to tell you, if John Ford showed up at your company and says you have a security breach, would you want to say, no, I don't, and I'll check with you later, and I'll come back next week, or should you be starting to do something? Well, I'm sure Mr. Ford would say, take care of it right now. One of the things that I woke up to a big surprise in May, I think it was May 5th of last year. Symantec, Brian Dye, who's one of the executives there, said antivirus is dead in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. And this was something that wasn't a shocker to me. I knew antivirus wasn't working. But he admitted publicly last year that antivirus is only catching about 45% of the new attacks. From that point, people have pretty much capitulated. And they've said, let's not try to do prevention anymore. Let's worry about detecting and remediation. Because they say it's not if you're going to be attacked and compromised, it's when. And so the question you have to be asking yourself as a cyber first responder or somebody who's responsible for protecting data and people is, where do you need to focus your time? And what is the right way to approach this? You start looking at the statistics. In the report at the end of 2013, McAfee reported that it was 25 million new pieces of malware were created and discovered. That's discovered in the fourth quarter of 2013. According to Kaspersky's website this month, they claim that it's 300,000 per day, which comes out to about 27 million per quarter. So the number of new pieces of malware is not shrinking, it's growing. And that flood is something that antivirus just can't keep up with anymore. The other thing that I think has been very clever on the part of hackers is the way that they QA. Now, we have to QA products. We have a QA person who takes our software and runs it through regression tests. He looks for ways to break it, looks for things that aren't working right or the improper user experience. Well, hackers have gotten smart. They said, how can we QA our software? Because their goal is to be undetectable. And so they basically co-opted the term FUD, which normally means fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and now they call it fully undetectable. So their goal is to make their product as fully undetectable to be able to bypass as many antiviruses as possible. How many people here have heard of virustotal.com? Oh, that's very few. Okay. So this is good information for you. It was back in 2012, I believe, Google acquired a company called VirusTotal. And what they did was a very clever thing. They started out and took a bunch of different antivirus engines, put them in their own private cloud, and so you could start submitting programs. And if you uploaded a piece of software through their website, they would run it against every antivirus engine they had. And then you would get a web page that would be published that would show you which one of these antivirus engines detected this as a virus or not. So if you had some innocuous piece of software and you uploaded it, and now they have at least 57 engines from the last time I looked, this last week, you would see that there's 57 different antivirus engines. Sometimes only 17 of those antivirus engines detect a piece of malware as being bad, even though all 57 have analyzed it. And the hackers have been doing a very good job. And so for their QA process, it's very simple. I take as many antivirus engines as I can, or even VirusTotal. I create my malware. I either run it against an AV tool, or I upload it to VirusTotal, and I get a report as to whether it's detected as being bad or not. And if it's not, if it is detected, all I have to do is change maybe some of the techniques I'm using to evade detection, and then upload it again, and you just keep repeating the process until it's good. It's like CryptoLocker. How many people know about CryptoLocker today? So CryptoLocker is a piece of ransomware, and there's many variants of it, that when it gets on your computer, it'll take and encrypt all of your data files. Specifically, they target certain ones that people want back. And then what they do is they send the keys to unlock those files out to one of their private servers. So when you try to open the file, all of a sudden you get a little pop-up saying that you have to pay money to get your data back for them to unlock it. They don't actually take your data, because that's a lot of stuff to take. All they do is prevent you from accessing. And so far, it's been reported on the internet that 2 police departments had actually paid the ransom. And that has outraged people that law enforcement officers are paying extortionist money. So if I'm a CryptoLocker provider, and they have many copycats now, there's another one called CryptoWall. If I am a hacker, and all of a sudden my CryptoLocker malware is being blocked, I change it. I change how I do it. And I use a different technique, or I use some other piece of software. So they're being very clever, and they're learning how to, because they're making big money. And I'd heard what John had said the other day, that the amount of money coming from criminal cyber activity is exceeding the global drug trade money. And that's a big incentive. We see people are willing to go to jail, risk going to jail for 20, 30, 40 years, or even life. And the people who have the opportunity to hack, they don't have to cross a border. They don't have to get in a truck and hijack a car and take it somewhere to sell it to a chop shop. They don't have to basically make a deal with somebody that they don't know who they are and be caught by an agent. So that the cyber criminals are making it it's a much easier opportunity for them to succeed. And they're learning how to do better at it. The other things that's going on is that there's techniques such as sandboxing. How many of you have been around since the days of Moses, like I have, and actually have ever heard of like an April Fool's Day type virus? Okay, so if you have a sandbox, the sandboxing vendors say, we'll drop your software into a sandbox, and that software will run, and we'll be watching it. And we'll watch it, and if it does something wrong, then we know it's bad, and we'll mark it as bad. But if we run it there for a week, we run it there for a month, or we run it there for a certain period of time, you can trust it because it's not working, and now you can start using it somewhere else. And then, hello? All of a sudden you have April Fool's Day, and your virus activates, but it's been out of your sandbox. The other thing that hackers are doing with sandboxing is they've figured out, hey, I can detect whether I'm in a sandbox or not. Am I actually on real hardware, or am I on virtual hardware? So some of the sandboxes I'm sure will be better than others, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to catch a hacker. The other problem is, when we are talking about antivirus, it's what we call a blacklisting technology. Blacklisting is meaning that, hey, you're on a non-allow list. You're not allowed to do something. So when you are basically on a disallowed list and you're an AV, you only can block the things that are on the list of things you don't want to allow. So that doesn't work, because what happens if I'm a bank robber? The way we see it in the product, the way we've developed, and the way we attack the problem of malware protection is, imagine you have a bank and they want to protect and prevent bad guys from coming in. With an antivirus technology today, imagine you have a bank guard and he's standing at the metal detector as employees and potential customers come to the bank. And each one, he basically looks through the wanted posters, okay? And he has to look through all the wanted posters. So he goes through the wanted posters and he sees, a person who says, oh yeah, you're not on this one. And all of a sudden, wait, I got a wanted poster for your bank robber. You're not allowed in. And so the bank robber goes out and he puts on his ski mask. He comes right back in, and the antivirus bank guard looks through all the wanted posters and says, oh, I can't identify you as being somebody on my list. Come on in. And instead, the technology we use is there's a fingerprint. If that person comes in and they want to come in, their fingerprint has to be on our trust list. If their fingerprint's not for a trusted person, we're not going to let them in. And so that's why many of these antivirus technologies are failing, is their supposition of. So how many people here have been involved in administering firewalls? Okay? You remember the days that when firewalls first came out, you had to put in a rule to block everything you didn't want. And very quickly we learned that, uh-oh, I don't know what I want to block all the time. Hackers would come up with new attacks, and nobody even thought that they would use that port. And so instead, what we did is the firewall industry changed to where it was a default deny. So you only put into your firewall list the list of connections and the protocols that you want to allow in. And that's exactly what you want. Instead of a allow everything and then just block some things, to protect against malware, you want to be able to only allow the things that you trust. And that's something that we deal with every day as human beings. You choose a bank, you choose a babysitter, you choose the person who's going to work on your car, you choose the money manager who's going to do your investment funds. So you are used to doing, I know how to trust somebody, I know how to pick somebody. Sometimes we make mistakes and we trust somebody who turns out to be a bad guy. And there's some solutions to that. So with the golden hour, the whole detection and remediation business is telling people, we can't detect viruses anymore, so let's just later kind of detect when you've been compromised, and then we'll fix it later. So with the Sony wiper attack that revealed a bunch of information, the FBI released information about with a snort signature that says, here's a way for you to be able to detect that your system has been wiped out. Because you will get an alarm from snort saying that The malware has communicated back to the mother server saying, yeah, we wiped that system out. So I'm thankful that the FBI and other people have produced signatures like that, but it tells me about the problem after the fact. There's that commercial about, somebody's heart attack didn't come with a warning. I want the warning. I want to know. I don't want to wait until it's too late. I don't want to be laying here on the floor for an hour and somebody said, you had a heart attack. I think I know that. I think the people at Sony didn't need to have an alarm from Snort telling them that 10 systems had been wiped out. I think the people using those systems knew they weren't working anymore. If the golden hour is important, certainly both for human health, as in medical trauma, and it's important in computer trauma. There are some things that may not be preventable, and it's important that people be able to have a remediation plan. Incident response is an important aspect, and that's what you do. My point in my talk is I don't want you to forget about prevention. So if you're thinking about the win, and you're only worried about the golden hour, and you don't think about preventing attacks, you're going to have a lot more golden hours to deal with. I would rather only deal with 1 or 2 incident response than have to deal with 90 incident responses like when our product was being used at Vignette. I can't imagine what it would be like for a security engineer working in a single company to get 90,000 alarms that he has to go investigate that month. There was a medical clinic here in Texas that I heard that the IT administrator was sleeping at the data center because HIPAA requirements meant that they had to keep things working and protected, and he was having to be there on the job to continue to try to remediate things because he didn't have an effective protection strategy. So there's a couple of governments, and I'm very thankful that the FBI has produced what we call private industry notifications that come out to tell companies and security vendors what's going on, what new kinds of things that they've seen, and I think people should listen to them and try to get involved in those programs to get that information as early a warning as they can. The Australian government came to my attention, and back in 2013, they released their top 35 mitigation strategies. How many people are familiar with this? Okay. If you're not familiar with this, we have this on our website. You can find some links to go see what they talk about. So how many people think patching is important to patch your systems? So we heard John Ford say that was what, 99% of hacks were on computers that were more than a year out of date on patches. Patching is important. The Australian government says patching is important, but it's the number 2 mitigation strategy. The number 1 mitigation strategy is only allow trusted programs to run. If it's not in your allow list, it shouldn't be allowed. Another thing that John said that I think is really important is, when we're at work, are we supposed to be doing our personal emails? Are we supposed to be, filling out the final 4 brackets? Okay. We're not. And one of the things that when we talk to our customers, we say, your business computers should be purpose-driven. Obviously, if I've got a cash register at HEB, I don't want one of the geeky employees to put a browser on it so he can surf while he's doing checking people out through the cash register. And it's the same thing. Sometimes there's no reason to have an application on your computer that's not needed for your job. And there's going to be some user resistance to this. It's one of those things that the paradigm shift that has to change, that in society and our business, people and employees start to take the responsibility of saying, I can't do whatever I want to with my computer when I want to. It's the computer or it's the company or organization's computer. So this to us is the number 1 strategy. It's just really simple. If you only run apps that you trust, you're going to eliminate most of today's security breaches. How many people here are willing to trust CryptoLocker? So I don't think any of you guys would put CryptoLocker on your trust list, and I don't think any of you guys then would be compromised. How many people here want to trust the Sony Viper virus? And I think that makes it very clear. It's very simple. We're not going to trust somebody. So if you had a mechanic that told you he was going to fix your car for for $200, and then when you showed up, you got a $1,000 bill, you're not going to use it again. And it's pretty simple for us to use simple trust technology. The other thing that we like to talk about in terms of why is antivirus failing. Well, as Symantec admitted, they're only catching about 45% of new viruses. I talked about some of those reasons. The hackers are getting smarter. They're making them fully undetectable in some cases. If a hacker goes and he basically says, you know, this application's not getting into this person who's using this approach over here at the Australian government, he can change his malware as much as he wants. But because his malware is never going to match the fingerprint or identity of the file that is on the Australian government's trust list, his program will never run there. It doesn't matter whether he creates 1,000, 25 million, 27 million, or 100 million versions of it, it won't run. The other problem that we have, that we've seen, is back doors left wide open. Subway, how many people have been to a Subway restaurant? So, in 2008, Romanian hackers basically guessed their way in to a remote access back door on a Subway cash register. And they were able to then take your credit card numbers and use them to steal and buy things on the internet and create credit card fraud. A year later, a Subway franchise owner, even though the Romanians got arrested and prosecuted and put in prison in the United States, this Subway franchise owner says, that's a pretty good idea. So he took point of sale systems, put his own backdoor, logged me in on them, created the account so he knew the password, and then he sold that to other franchise owners across the United States. And then he and his friends would log in with the password through the access that they had given themselves as a backdoor. And those franchise owners didn't know that their own customers' credit card numbers were being stolen and used to create gift cards for these guys to sell on the internet and use for their own lunches. And they got caught because they started selling them on eBay in big bulk. So another thing that you can do, antivirus, if you have a program, Log Me In is not a virus. It's not a malicious piece of software. It's a valid program, just like some kind of an FTP server. That FTP server is not malicious, so antivirus and anti-malware systems won't detect it. And this is why the strategy of only allow what you trust. If Log Me In was not on the trust list, it would have never have run on those point of sale systems and they would have never been compromised. The other kind of thing that doesn't get detected is what I call good apps gone bad. And good apps gone bad, for example, are like the Heartbleed bug that was OpenSSL. It had a bug in it. And it went years before it was detected. But antivirus won't consider a bad version of a program that has an old version as bad. But with an allow to run only what you trust technology, you're able to say, I'm going to block any version. You take it off your trust list, and those versions that have the bugs that are security holes will no longer be allowed to run on your host systems. And we come to one other issue that's really, I think, in some cases split people's opinions, and that's the question of malicious insiders. Some people have said, well, this person might actually be a hero for what he's done. Other people say he's a horrible person. It doesn't matter what your opinion is of the person. Edward Snowden has become a poster child for being someone who said he was going to do behave one way, and he changed his behavior after he got the job. I even read an article that said that he admitted that he'd taken the job with Booz Allen with the intention of being able to access the NSA data and then disclosing it later. So when you have a malicious insider, that's one problem. The other thing you need to do is be even more forward-thinking. How do you deal with malicious administrators? People who have access to your security system, but are able to make changes in the security system to allow an application that shouldn't be allowed to run, or to be able to trust a backdoor. So you have to be thinking about how to solve those problems. The NSA said they had to take 41 actions to prevent these kinds of leaks. There's a lot of different security technologies that apply at different places. Network security, intrusion detection. What we feel is that prevention is a required line of defense. You can't just say that prevention's not needed. We don't give out smallpox vaccinations anymore. It's because the disease has been essentially eradicated. We haven't eradicated hackers yet, so we can't stop talking about prevention. We still give children vaccinations for measles and for tetanus. In fact, every time I get a cut, if I haven't had a tetanus shot in 10 years, I get a new tetanus shot because I don't want to die from tetanus. And that's one of the things that we have to be aware of, is that prevention is better than knowing after the fact. If I have lockjaw symptoms and I'm dying laying on a bed, I know that I have tetanus, and I would rather prevent it. We've had some really bad scares with things like Ebola, and if there was an Ebola vaccine, we would gladly take it if we were in a high-risk area, for sure. Another thing that has to be done when we're talking about looking at the future, there are technologies out there that, like the Australian and Canadian governments recommend, which is basically termed whitelisting, application whitelisting, and that's this: it's only allowed to run if it's on the allow list. One of the problems is that they use basically a hash fingerprint, and some people have theorized that by the year 2018 or 2020, that those fingerprints can be compromised through what I would term as brute force hash collision. So just like some of you probably heard about brute force password cracking, where you get a list of the hashes and you keep guessing at the password until you get it right. Well, there's simple ways that, for you students, there's simpler ways to automate that to make it faster. So in the future, by the year 2018, 2020, some people have theorized that Russian mafia, for instance, could go out and buy enough CPU power for a reasonable price on Amazon that they could do this kind of hash collision. So one of the things that we advocate is you can't just depend upon a single fingerprint. What we do is we have a methodology that allows you to use all five, so you have the equivalent of a handprint plus the file size. So these are the things that you have to be thinking about. We don't believe that we're going to cure 100% of all malware with our solution. What we're going to do is cut off 100% of malware via one avenue attack. And just like in the criminal history of the world, when criminals basically were able to go and break into your cars, I had my car stolen when I was 17 years old from the high school parking lot. Stripped, stolen, and burned. I didn't have a car alarm, but I had a key. They just basically, I'm sure, wired the ignition switch. So then we added, immobilizers on the cars. Did we stop locking our cars? No. Then people started adding car alarms. I'm sorry, the car alarms became before the immobilizers. But we didn't stop adding car alarms just because we had immobilizers. And now we have OnStar. OnStar can detect that your car has crossed the country. It can help the FBI to locate it and recover it. But I'm still not going to stop the preventative techniques of having a key and having a car alarm, just because I have another technology that detects things. And so in leaving these things with you, what I really ask is that you keep thinking about prevention and figure out how do you select an effective prevention strategy that will help lower the amount of work that you have to do for incident response. So does anybody have any questions about this? We have a demo here. Go ahead.
One question. You said all five plus the file size?
Yes.
Is that 5 different hashing algorithms?
Correct. So what I realized, there was, I don't know if, what made me think about this particular technique was when it was disclosed through one of Edward Snowden's documents that reportedly the NSA had given money to RSA to weaken their security algorithms. It started making me think about how can I trust the hashing algorithms and how can they be cracked. And so doing some research, I started realizing that although I think it would be very, very hard for somebody to duplicate a hash fingerprint of a file. First off, if you use the file length, that of course narrows the possibility of being able to use a false fingerprint against a specific file. Because the way the technology of trying to do this would be the hacker would keep modifying his malware, hoping that he could make the malware match a valid hash fingerprint. If you're using the file size, that lowers the possibility. But if I now then say, besides SHA-1, I use SHA-256 and a SHA-512 and an MD5 and a CRC32, now he has to modify his file and get the new file to match all 5 fingerprints of the good file. And that is, although I'm not enough of a mathematician to write the proof on the whiteboard, I believe it's theoretically impossible. That answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? So we've been very fortunate to have the team here at St. Philip's College. Oh, we got another one back here?
Well, I was wondering about your whitelisting applications. Let's say Firefox releases updates every 2 weeks. Do I have to whitelist an application every 2 weeks?
Right, so what we call it is our technology is a step above whitelisting. We call it trust listing. And the reason is you trust an app or you trust an expert. So let's say, for instance, you have the technology installed and you are following me, meaning that you trust me. Then all I have to do is keep my fingerprints up to date and you get the advantage of that. And that's why it's a community-based solution. Not only do you get to choose which apps you trust, but you get to choose which people that you trust. So I'm not going to trust somebody in Russia. Obviously, the CIA is not going to trust, they're not going to get onto a social site and say, we're going to trust the KGB to keep their fingerprints up there. Does that answer your question? So one of the things that we do is we recommend to customers, we say, you should not be doing auto updates anyway. The reason auto updates have started to come into play is because software vendors have been producing really bad code, either with security flaws or just bugs in it. And they've convinced the American people and the world at large that auto update solves this problem. I don't want my computer changing. How many people have ever heard of a report of Microsoft releasing a patch on Patch Tuesday that broke a lot of computers? Okay, so the laughs tell me that if you are a seasoned IT professional, you want to manage the movement of those patches. And so I hope that answers your question. We think people should be managing their fingerprints. And one of the ways we suggest doing it is you have a golden image, a machine that you trust, that you know is not compromised, and that when you make changes or you know that there's updates you want to apply, that you just add those new fingerprints. Any other questions?
So for the fingerprint, I think in the near future we will see some quantum computers. So even 5 or 6 fingerprints will not be enough. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think the problem is that because the hashing algorithms use different polynomials to compute, I think that it might, with the help of God, a quantum computer might be able to make 5 different polynomials all match the same thing. In my opinion, for the next 10 to 20 years, you're not going to be able to modify a piece of malware and get it to match 5 separate fingerprints. I would love to talk to you later about this because I'm always interested in, the whole goal here is for us to figure out how do we block the avenues of attack, to be thinking proactively about them, and making sure that we are not just sitting idle. And I love the commercials about Rob Lowe. I'm sorry that they're taking him off, the series off, but I don't want you to be a clueless Rob Lowe and give your password to the stranger on the street. In fact, I was talking with somebody who's a potential partner with us, and he had a knock on his door, and it was the cable guy. And I said, they always say that they're the cable guy. So we don't always know who somebody is or what they're trying to do to get into our home. Were there any other questions? Okay. Jeremy Slaughter has done an independent evaluation of the product that we are saying is this is the kind of technology you should use. And he's going to talk a little bit about the tests that they did and show what they've been able to ascertain about using a default deny policy.
It was actually me and David.
Oh, and David.
All right, so this is just going to be a basic video at first. And we tried multiple different operating systems. We recorded for Server 08 and for Windows 7, but we tried multiple within Windows operating systems. It's just basically showing how it works.
Excuse me, Jeremy, can you give us a little bit of a play-by-play about what's happening, what we're seeing here, and what we're seeing on the bottom left-hand side where it says White Cloud Security Block? I'm assuming that you're trying different versions of malware against the product.
This is actually showing not only different versions of malware and things, but this is also where he was actually running Internet Explorer, for example, and it wasn't within the trusted apps. And so since it wasn't within the trusted apps, he couldn't run Internet Explorer. And if you, down this area right down here, this is where you'll actually see what it's blocking, and you can actually set it where it will show you what it's allowing through also. This is a different route that you can actually trust certain things. So you saw him come over here and trust Microsoft to allow Internet Explorer to go through. This is another way of doing it, of just setting up the fingerprints like he was talking about before, and that's what he's doing here.
What did you test against the software, and what were the results?
We tested everything from, we tried the ransomware, like the crypto locker and things like that he was talking about. We tested that on multiple different operating systems. We tested, there's a bunch of different online groups that you can get on, and they have multiple versions of malware and things like that you can use for testing. Well, we went and got dozens and dozens of different versions of malware and tried them on multiple different operating systems. This is him showing what it's not allowing to run from those sections. But yeah, we literally, and in just a moment I'll show you a video of trying some of that malware and it actually being allowed through because the system was turned off, and then where we turned it on and then tried running the same system and it showed that it was blocked.
Now, Jeremy?
Yes.
Did you by any way tell the system fingerprints for this malware? Did you add anything to tell it what you were trying to run against it?
No. We, for example, the tests that we ran together and the ones that we did separately, we literally just went and got different operating systems. We make a baseline of what we wanted. We did some with VirtualBox and just different things like that. Then we would add that whole cache of fingerprints to it at one time. Then download the program and everything like it states in the initial setup. Once we did that, then we would run anything we could against it. We even would try to run good known apps that we hadn't trusted, and it still wouldn't work. Now with this back here just a little bit, it's actually running it again. Whenever it was running the Internet Explorer, it was coming up. For those of you that have worked with Windows Server, the firewall will automatically not allow certain things to get through. Even on Internet Explorer, you have to go in and add that on the firewall. That is what he was demonstrating there. This is just another one of the mini tests that we ran. It still showed up as a warning, but you can still see that it let it through because we actually didn't have it enabled at that point. So with it not being enabled, then it's obviously not going to function 100% right there, but it will still show you. This is with it being enabled. But yeah, it was literally that simple. This is, like he was talking about earlier, a version of the crypto locker. But yeah, that's basically what we did. We ran everything that we could imagine toward it. We tried doing everything from scripts to viruses to anything we could imagine. We weren't able to get any of it to go through. Not saying that it's obviously not 100%, I don't know, but we weren't able to. Along with that, whenever we would actually go and check the registry files, we weren't able to find any registry files that were saved in there. While for the ones that we were actually running while it was turned on. You know, when the ones that we showed that was turned off, we could find the files, we were able to do multiple different things like that. But for the ones that it was turned on, we weren't able to. And that's even within the registry.
Have you used an application whitelisting technology in the past?
We played around with similar structures when I was working for the military, but none that was easy to deal with that. You know, the trusting application that I saw in it, I actually prefer much more. But that's just my experience. I don't know.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, David, for your help in doing this. Our main goal is to try to advocate for the #1 mitigation strategy that Australia and Canada are asking people to do. The Australian government has already mandated application whitelisting as the #1 solution, and they've mandated use on all Australian federal computer systems. I don't know whether they finished deploying that or not, but I would think that there'd probably not be hacking at high levels of our government if they were using a technology that was similar to that. So as you go and you work on remediation and incident response, try to reduce the number of golden hour incidents that you have to deal with, and look at a technology, whether it's ours or somebody else that has an application or an app control technology. So thank you very much for your time today. I was really honored to be here. Thanks.
We want to present you also with a small token of appreciation for presenting with us today. Thank you once again. And also I'd like to mention that the 2 students are second-year students in our Information and Security program here at St. Philip's College.